What happens when organized crime decides to move into your town? It could take years to get rid of it, as Carol Maureen found in her story about one town in Illinois.
The name of the town is Cicero, and the mobster that moved in was Al Capone. That was in the 1920s, when Capone and his gangsters were looking for a safe and protected place and moved their headquarters from Chicago to Cicero, when Cicero first got married to the mob. It's been a long time since the law caught up with Capone, but as you'll see, the mob's chokehold on everything from gambling to government, what Capone started more than 80 years ago, may not yet be gone. Cicero, Illinois is a blue-collar town filled with the faces of hard work. Very few people in this suburb of 70,000 ever get rich, but one group that has made money here for the better part of 80 years is the group known simply as the Outfit.
They don't come any bigger than Alphonse Capone.
Al Capone was the first, but hardly the last of the big-name mob bosses who controlled the rackets in Cicero. There was Frank Nitti, Capone's enforcer and hand-picked successor, Sam Momo Giancana, whose friendships included John Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe, and Tony Big Tuna Accardo, the most feared and respected of all mob bosses. Nearly 40 years ago, this was how Cicero was described by the Cook County State's Attorney.
I characterized Cicero in 1961 as being a walled city of the syndicate.
Back in 1989, that wall began to crack. The man on the left in this IRS surveillance tape is Cicero native Bill Jehoda, who for 10 years was one of the mob's top bookies.
I was in the gambling department. I'm in the mob's hospitality wing, or the entertainment division. But let me tell you, gambling is a very dangerous and competitive line of work. There were 3 murders on my shift that I was aware of that related to gambling.
And 2 of those murders, you drove the men to what ended up being their final destination.
In 2 of those cases, I was what would be considered the setup guy. I steered the men to the place where they were ultimately killed.
Not long after that, Bill Jehoda became a government informant, and his testimony helped convict 20 members of a gambling crew headquartered in Cicero. When his work was done, Jehoda left town a marked man. Welcome to Town Hall.
Good to be back. This brings back memories.
So when he returned home at our request to talk about the mob and Cicero, he did so with plenty of security.
The mob controlled Town Hall. It wasn't necessarily who was in there, it was who the mob put in there.
To look the other way, it would.
Correct.
And that applied to the police department or any other part of the government?
Absolutely, from one end of the building to the other.
According to Jehoda, in the 1980s and 1990s, the mob's man at Town Hall was trustee Frank Maltese. In 1988, Frank Maltese married his longtime girlfriend, Betty Loren, with some of the mob's top men in attendance. 3 years later, a federal grand jury indicted Frank Maltese on gambling and racketeering charges. Maltese pled guilty to those federal charges, but died before he could be sent to prison, but not before pulling off what some consider his best political fix. In a closed-door meeting with other town trustees, Frank Maltese pulled the strings to have his wife, who had never been elected to any office, named the president of the town of Cicero.
Good afternoon, Cicero Town Hall.
Today, up on the second floor of Town Hall is where you will find Betty Loren-Matese, Cicero's former liquor commissioner, who has a penchant for big hair and false eyelashes. Despite being married to a mobster, she took office and vowed to change Cicero's mob image.
Every community has a problem, but apparently we get the notoriety because everybody knows the name Cicero. Everybody. You can go out of state. Some people in southern states say, oh my God, Cicero. They assume that there's hitmen and machine guns on the streets.
Since 1993, Betty Loren-Maltese has closed down strip joints, taken on street gangs, and 3 years ago she set out to reform Cicero's police department, which by her own account was corrupt. After a nationwide search, she found the man to do the job in Joplin, Missouri. David Niebuhr was the chief there when he got a call from a recruiter.
He described the location, the type of crime, type of government that they had previously had, and I told him, you got to be talking about Cicero, and if you think I would go to Cicero, Illinois, you have to be stark raving mad.
What changed his mind, Niebuhr said, was a talk he had with the town president.
I mean, this was discussed specifically with Betty, is that no one, if I find that they are involved in corruption, is untouchable.
When you said that to Betty Loren-Matese, that if I find corruption, that person's going to get it, what did she say?
She agreed to every one of the terms.
And so he accepted. And it wasn't long before Niebuhr said he started to find things that appeared corrupt. For instance, there was ram towing, which, after submitting the low bid, got the exclusive contract to tow cars in Cicero. Is there a lot of money to be made in a towing contract of this size?
An unbelievable amount of money made in police tows in any metropolitan community.
Ram got that contract after being in business just 1 week, and over the next 2 years, Ram Towing, along with its sister company, gave over $30,000 to the political campaign of Betty Loren-Matese. Did you ever say to her, I believe there's corruption going on in Ram Towing with the city?
Yeah, I told her that, and I told her about some other activities that I believe corruption existed.
When you began seeing the other specters of corruption, did organized crime intrude on that landscape as well?
I received a lot of information from people about where organized crime was involved in the town of Cicero and in government.
And he said he learned firsthand that the mob might be in his own police station.
The day that I really believed that organized crime fingers were in town government for sure was 2 days after we seized some illegal poker machines, sting operation, which I had ordered.
Poker machines have been notorious as organized crime vehicles for making money.
Yes.
The machines were put in a secured property room at the police station. But 2 days later, Niebuhr said, someone used a key to enter the room and empty the money out of the machines.
That is scary.
Scary because?
It appeared to me that organized crime was reaching out and touching someone, and in this case, me and the Cicero Police Department.
So Niebuhr said he went to Betty Loren-Matese and told her about yet another area of corruption.
I asked Betty then to make poker machines illegal in the town of Cicero, as many towns have done.
What did she say?
And she refused to do it.
Niebuhr said he couldn't give us any more specifics than that because he was ordered not to share too much information with us. And who told him that? The FBI did. The FBI had already bugged Town Hall in their ongoing corruption probe in which Betty Loren-Matese was one of the targets. Niebuhr said the FBI told him they needed his help in their still current investigation. Ram Towing said, through its attorney, that it has done nothing wrong, and that's what this man said as well. Merrick Rail was Cicero's special legal counsel. When Niebuhr made his allegations of corruption, Merrick Rail investigated at Betty Loren-Matese's request and said he found no wrongdoing.
I didn't hear about any, and I certainly didn't see it, and it's not my sense, having worked with those folks, that they were corrupt in any fashion.
In any organized crime, mob-related
Certainly
faction?
in any organized crime or mob connection. I mean, I saw none of that, heard none of it, smelled none of it.
Merrick Rail served as Cicero's special legal counsel for a year and a half. Besides investigating Niebuhr's claims, his other principal job was to catch fire and police officers who violated the town's residency requirements. His bill for a year and a half was $1.5 million. That's a lot of legal cost, isn't it?
Well, it's a lot of legal work that triggers a cost.
You made a contribution to Betty Loren-Matese's political
Absolutely,
fund.
I did. I think the total came out to something like $23,000.
Actually, it came out to more like $34,000 for a year and a
Could
half.
be.
And it was about $2,000 a month. Should we believe there's a correlation between the money you're getting for your legal services to the money that is going into a political fund?
I wouldn't draw that inference if I were you, but you could believe what you want.
Merrick Rail said Betty Loren-Matese fired him because his bills were too high. His replacement, a personal friend of the president, charged even more.
Did it hurt? Sure it did. Did I like the work? Sure I did. Do I like her? Absolutely. It wasn't pleasant.
It wasn't pleasant and it hurt, so why do you still like her?
I think she has done a tremendous job as president of the town of Cicero. And I think lesser people would have walked away from that job because of the constant turmoil, the constant bad press.
Would it be too harsh to suggest that you might have 1.5 million reasons to still like her?
It would be harsh to suggest that, yes.
Just 4.5 months after Betty Loren-Matese hired David Niebuhr to reform the Cicero Police Department, she fired him. Niebuhr is now suing. He was dismissed, he said, after turning over documents to the FBI, which he says show a pattern of fraud.
That night, 5 members of the police department showed up at my house, seized my car, uniforms, ammunition, and served me with a letter from Betty saying that I could no longer represent myself as an employee of the town of Cicero in any capacity.
Madam President, would you stop and speak with us for a moment?
No, Carol, I won't.
But could we speak about how some town money is being spent in Cicero?
This is not the place, Carol.
Betty Loren-Matese never did talk to us. In a written statement, the town's attorney said, quote, the exclusively negative nature of the topic submitted for discussion could only serve to harm the improving image of the town of Cicero. But she did talk to WBBM TV in Chicago back in April of 1998.
Does the town have a problem? Are there investigations going on? Yes. Will there always be? I think yes, because we're Cicero.
People in Cicero say enough already of Al Capone. You know, it's not the way it's been characterized.
Well, the man's been dead for 50 years, but the legend lives on.
And the name of Frank Maltese lives on as well. Betty Loren-Matese dedicated the town's public safety building in honor of her husband, the late mob felon. Refers to him as this man of opportunity, this man of peace.
Frank was an opportunist. I definitely give him credit for that. He was a schemer.
Jehoda's testimony, which helped convict Frank Maltese, was a blow to the outfit, but it was hardly fatal. The man who now runs the day-to-day operation of the Chicago mob, according to authorities, is this man, Johnny Apes Monteleone, a former Cicero resident.
I learned the hard way that Al Capone really never left Cicero. I believe that the organization still exists in Cicero.
Cicero is still mobbed up?
Oh, yes.
Without question.
Yes.
near your home in Cicero again?
Well, I mean, every day is really a challenge, but I'm just happy that I'm not locked in, but it really is a challenge. Starting over when you're older is very difficult.
Were you confined in one facility that whole time?
When I was first sent, I was sent to a prison, an FCI for women that was high security with barbed wire and electric fences and locked in. It was very unusual because most of the co-defendants were sent to camps. But I was sent the farthest distance from my house and sent to a high security prison. And then after a year and a half, I was transferred to a camp, which really was a little step up, but not much different.
Well, welcome back to Cicero and Chicago area.
It's what happened to me.
I want to see the juicy part. Should Ed Verdoliak be worried?
I think everyone will be interested, let's put it that way.
Mayor Daley be worried?
They'll be interested.
Betty names names. She won't allow us to read the biggest bombshells regarding the links between the mob and Illinois lawmakers and judges, but did share these tidbits. Illinois Speaker of the House Mike Madigan once said he would help her get a casino in Cicero if she supported his Democratic candidate for state legislature. Former Illinois Treasurer Judy Bartopinko once told her people in Cicero were too dumb to work for her. And Mayor Daley advised Betty to dump Ed Verdoliak, her political guru, and Daley's
Good to see you, Betty Loren-Matese.
Well, it's good to see you again.
Madam Mayor.
Right, it's been a while.
It's been a while. It's great to see you. Everything. We're going to talk about you just part of the time because you're not a guest.
No.
You're my co-host. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
You're my
I'm with the governor.
Yeah, right. Tell me about the situation, if you will, with your daughter, Ashley.
Well, it's very strained because of the relationship. I do not have a relationship with my mother and sister anymore because at the advice of a former alderman in the city, they filed for full custody against me back in November of '07, so I have not spoken to them probably since the end of '07. I speak to Ashley on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to be with me, but it's going to be a court battle. Even emancipation does not mean anything. Alabama's kind of different. The judge has ruled that my sister has full custody till Ashley's 18. So it's going to be a battle, but of course I have to make more monies. I have to show that I'm stable and that I can afford to raise Ashley like she should be raised. So I'm thinking it's going to take me at least a year.
All right. Well, you're doing some things, too.
Yeah.
I mean, not, of course, there's been a lot about your hostessing at a upscale pizza
You know, that's
restaurant.
such a career.
But you're also, I understand, doing some other things, doing some research.
Well, I do a little computer work for someone researching, in fact, foreclosures.
Right.
That's part-time from the house, but since I've been at that restaurant, I would say their business has tripled.
I believe that.
And there has been offers made to join ventures of other businesses, restaurants, and to go other places. So it has been good for me in a lot of ways, and it's been, of course, good for the owners.
Well, I don't understand the situation because you were taking very good care of your mom, and she was living in your apartment, your building rather, in Cicero.
Well, I had moved them to Vegas.
To Vegas, that's right.
There were threats on Ashley's life when she was 4. And there was an 8-minute tape that the phone company traced back to, of all places, a land phone at the Chicago 911 Center. State's attorney would not help. The feds would not help, despite listening to the tape of what they were going to do. So at that time, I had to make a decision. It was either Ashley or politics. So the head of my security had retired, and he and his wife moved to Vegas. And Billy had said, move your mom and Ashley out there because I can take care of them, because I decided then that I was going to have to step down. Because Ashley was more important. And since I could not get any help from any authorities, so I had moved them there, but then Bill and his wife moved back to Illinois because they missed the grandkids. So it kind of left them stranded. But I had always thought I would raise Ashley there. And then when I got to the halfway house in Vegas in August, they were going to take me there, the halfway house people, to get some clothes because I only left with my prison grays. And the Thursday before that Friday, 2 agents came and says, we decided we're taking this house too, so that left me homeless. So it's been an experience, and I just like to say for 7 years I was in a coma, and hopefully I can forget a lot of those things, but sometimes, you know, things get etched and it can never be removed.
Yeah, well, you're a strong person, though. That's
well,
sure.
Lithuanians are either strong or crazy or both or whatever.
There were so many things that you have done. A gentleman who wrote a book about Cicero, and he said the more he found out about the mayor, meaning you, the more he knew he didn't know you.
Right.
That you were totally different than everything he'd ever read, or you know, people he talked to, they loved you, and this was after the situation, and they said, oh yeah, if she came back, you know, we'd vote for her.
Right.
You know, yeah, particularly seniors, and because you did a lot of good.
Well, I had a lot of good employees, department heads, people that cared about the town.
Yeah.
That's a big importance, but I really have not been portrayed. Most people that meet me that do not know me from the town will say, gee, that's not what, you know, this said or whatever, but unfortunately I think that had a lot to do with my conviction, because people just assumed that I was horrible. But it's interesting you say about writing a book. There was a book that was published by a large publishing company that I never spoke to the writer, and it said that I was a stripper and that I worked topless in a topless bar. And I'm reading the book, I'm thinking, surely, and it's a hardcover book. And it was at the Las Vegas Library, and there was a couple of men who were at the halfway house that read it, and one of them came up to me and says, well, were you really a stripper? And I didn't know what he was talking about. So, I mean, irresponsible reporting can really damage a person.
Yeah, people believe it, unfortunately.
Right. If it's in the print, they believe it.
Yeah, that's right. Let's take a call with my co-host, the Honorable Betty Loren-Matese. Yusuf, you're on with Cliff and Betty.
Yes,
Hi.
Yusuf and Madam Mayor. You know, it's really something. I'm going to just ask a couple questions and get off the air. I would ask the mayor, does she think she was railroaded in this whole? It seemed like that this was a total. I mean, it seemed like you didn't have a chance to win, and in this whole debacle of a trial. And also, I would like to ask, would you ever in the future think about running for an office again?
No one testified against me. No one said I knew what was going on. The government has admitted I didn't benefit. In their closing argument, they said, well, no one testified that she knew, but she should have known, and if she didn't know, she ought to have known because of her position. So that had 7 years in prison, but anything that would help me through my trial, and of course my attorney did not put on any defense for reasons that'll be expounded on at a later time. I don't believe I got a fair trial, and that's all I had ever asked for. Well, you know, even after I was indicted, not because I want to sound like I'm bragging, but even after my indictment, I won an election with 85% of the vote.
Yeah.
Against a county commissioner that Mayor Daley had Streets and Sands come in ringing doorbells and stuff.
I remember that.
The gangs, everything, and I still won 85% of the vote. But, I mean, the people in town know the difference that my administration has made, because it was not me myself. It was, I had terrific workers and had honest, hard-working people. Unfortunately, according to state law, I cannot run for office in Cicero again, which I know I'm going to talk to Cliff, because I think ACLU should represent me in a lawsuit, because if Marion Barry can run again, then why can't people in the state of Illinois?